And you're checking to make sure it goes. All right. Greetings, chess players, and welcome back to the Daily Chess Musings Thanksgiving Break Chess Camp. I am honored to have Coach Jay with me. Jay and I have been friends for a very, very long time, and he is perhaps the coolest of the chess coaches I get to work with. Today on the schedule, he's going to be giving you a lesson from one of his books that I really, really enjoy, which is actually behind me. I enjoy it so much, it's always out. Fried Liver and the Burning Pants. And then we're going to do some question and answers. All right, Coach Jay, take it away.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks, Coach Chris. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here today. And I mean, there's no better way to spend Black Friday than doing a little chess camp. And I'm glad everybody's here. I am going to do two lesson segments today. First one, I am going to read a story from my book, Fried Liver and Burning Pants, and the lessons we learned from them. And then we're going to look at the lesson that we actually learned from that story, or close. And then after that, I guess we'll do a little Q&A, and then going to do a lesson called Never Take the Queen's Knight Pawn with Your Queen. And after that, I will release 3 Kahoot challenges to you. One is going to be a time challenge that you'll be able to do these at home on your own. The second one is an untimed challenge about never taking the Queen Knight Pawn. The third one is for our newer players, and it's just a little video about in-your-face checkmate. And so if the lesson goes a little fast for you, or you just want something a little different, then you'll have a chance to check that one out. So I would like to
hang on one second, Jay. We seem to be having an echo that people are telling me about on the stream right now, so I'm going to try and take care of that real fast.
All right, I'll check my end.
They're asking me if I can mute my stream. Okay.
Is that better?
Go ahead, Coach Jay.
All right. Everybody hear me okay now? No big echo? All right. I am Coach Jay, and thanks again to Coach Chris and Daily Chess Musings for having me in. Today's story is called Temper Temper. And after I get started with it, I'm actually going to bring up an illustration from the story. So, Temper Temper. The title of Grand Master is the highest one a chess player can achieve. It takes years of practice to become a Grandmaster and many hours of study and preparation. All that effort is worthwhile, though, because once someone achieves the title of Grandmaster, it is theirs for life. Russian Alexander Alekhine is considered by many people to be the first Grandmaster of modern times. Alekhine was known for his meticulous, which means exact and careful, study methods, and for his talent in spotting small weaknesses in his opponent's openings and playing styles. When he took the title of World Chess Champion away from Jose Raul Capablanca in 1927, he was able to do it because he had spent many hours studying games the Cuban had played in the past and had figured out a way to beat him. Because he spent so much time preparing in this way, he won more tournaments than Emanuel Lasker and Capablanca combined. This made him happy because he was very competitive. But nobody wins all the time, and Alekhine did have some losses in his past. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. And so here we go.
Okay. It's not long enough.
So at the Carlsbad tournament in Czechoslovakia, now known as Czech Republic, in 1923, Alekhine had worked hard, as usual, and with only 2 rounds remaining, was comfortable in his familiar position at the top of the standings. He fully expected to stay there. After all, he had spent a lot of time carefully preparing, as he always did. And then, something for which he had not prepared happened. He lost. He had abandoned the chance for a draw and was pushing for a win when his opponent, Frederick Yates, used his queen and bishop to take advantage of Alekhine exposed king. Alekhine's frustration was enormous. But, as good sportsmanship requires, he politely shook hands with his opponent, congratulated him on his victory. Then, Alexander Alekhine calmly walked back to his hotel room and destroyed every piece of furniture in the room. So, good sportsmanship. Yeah, when it was important, right? He was showing good sportsmanship there in the tournament hall with Yates, with all the spectators watching. He kept his temper inside. He went back. Nobody was hurt except this poor furniture. Now, my favorite part of this illustration, by the way, is that when he goes into the room, look at the painting above his bed. If you look at the painting, it has a nice house landscape with the sun shining, the tree there, and of course, afterwards, after he destroys the room, it looks just a little bit different. Just a little bit. All right. I am going to switch from this over to learning about this position. So actually, one more position, or one more thing that I want to look at. This is what we're going to learn about Yates.
Coach Jay!
Coach
Jay! Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. So now you can see the position. Okay, right? Or the illustrated position. The illustrated position, right, Coach Chris? I think so. Okay. I am going to switch it over. And we're going to have a look at a little bit of chess here. So let me bring up the chess position. Just a second. And Coach Chris, I'm gonna see if I can't figure out this Skype for the first time. In that I am new to this, but I usually do all my lessons on my own program, Zoom. But all right, here we go. So we're looking at Yates and Frederick Yates. This position is black. Alexander Alekhine is white. Yates goes in for this check. Now look what he does. He backs his bishop out to make sure the king can't escape. And now a check. And a checkmate. I like to call this the bishop back opens up this discovery. Now we've got a couple positions where we can see on the white side and look at this bishop back out mate. Now, Coach Chris, I don't know how interactive we are here as far as having guys in the chat with answers and such like that. But the problem is that when we move the bishop out, then it is going to check the king. But if we just go anywhere with the bishop, then after the queen checks to G1, and the king will scoot out to G3. So you have to be careful about where you move the bishop to. In this position, the bishop backs out to F2 to guard the escape square. Now the queen comes in for the mate. Let's look at one that's a little bit tougher. All right. So how about this position? Now, when we back the bishop out, the king is just off and running. It looks like he's going to find an escape route and get to D7. What do we do here? Well, it starts with a bishop back out, discovered. But notice where the bishop went. Now it's supporting future capture on C7. And this is what I like to call a face mate. The queen goes in the king's cheek, pushing him over to the side, and in his face for checkmate. All right, we'll take it one step backwards. What do we do in this position? So it's very tempting to play the Queen H7 check. But once again, the king gets on his horse. Not really a horse, It's an expression. It means he gets out of there. And he's off and running. So instead, check. And there it is. Discovered check at G6, supporting that your face mate. In your face mate, in 2 more moves, and then checkmate. All right, and then finally we have a position that looks a lot the game with Yates and Alyekin. And so the question is, which way does this bishop retreat? What are the key squares to cover? Do you think the key square to cover is F3? Then the bishop goes back to D1. If you think it's at F3, C6. If you think it's then the bishop will go to C8. So you have to look at that. And kind of go through it in your head. I'm going to do that. You guys can do that with me. Let's think about it. Where does he have more room to run? We don't want to let him run off to where there's a lot of squares. A lot of empty squares. You'll notice on the king side, he's pretty blocked in. So looks like we want him to go this way and not escape over here, where he might have some room. So the bishop comes back C6 square with this discovered check. And the king is often running towards the king side, where we can finish him off. Kind of like a reverse cheek face mate. Check, and then checkmate. Finishing him off. So this is called the bishop back out mate, or named after this game, the Yates mate, which I kind of like. It rhymes a bit. Okay. So now we're gonna switch from this and look at a series of games capturing the queen's knight pawn was a big mistake. All right. Let me switch over to that screen. Just a second, guys. All right, I am moving. Here we go. So our first game is a classic. This is a fantastic game played by one of my favorite players in history, Mikhail Tal. Grandmaster Mikhail Tal was fun. He came on the scene very quickly when he was young. He won the Russian championship a couple years in a row. I think it was 1958 and 59. And then in 1960, he challenged Mikhail Botvinnik for the title of world's champion. And he beat Botvinnik, became world's champion, but Mikhail Tal always had health issues. And the next year, he was pretty sick when he lost the title back. 20 years later, though, Mikhail Tal was once again the second-ranked player in the world. 20 years after he was world's champion. So Mikhail Tal was a great player for a long time. And in this game, he is going to beat his opponent by following all the rules that myself and Coach Chris and pretty much every chess coach tells you to do. But there's one fun part to this that I really want to draw your attention to, and that's the theme of this lesson. Never take the queen's knight pawn with your queen. And the queen's knight pawn is the B pawn. When Coach Chris and I were growing up, we did notation a different way. So it was pawn to king 4, pawn to king 4, knight to king's bishop 3, and stuff like that. And we had to write all of that notation on stone because paper wasn't invented yet either. Okay, that part's not true. In any case, let's look at this game. This is Mikhail Tal against Tringov, and it was played in 1964. Tal is white, and Tringov is fianchettoing his kingside bishop. And that might be the highlight of the game for him. That's about all he does. That's good. So Tal is doing all the things we love to see. He has his king pawn pushed up, his queen pawn, and both knights have come towards the center. I mean, isn't this exactly what the coaches tell you to do, right? And so he develops a bishop, and I like where he put it, because a lot of times we automatically go right next to the pawn over here. But in this case, what he's trying to do is stop the e pawn from coming up. So he pins it. with the bishop. And his opponent says, okay, yeah, I better bring my queen out. And Tal says, you want to take my b pawn, my queen's knight pawn with your queen. When you do, it might be a little bit inconvenient for me because my knight will be hanging. And so he prepares for this. He gets ready for this, to give away this pawn by just stepping the queen forward 1 square. It guards the knight. Now, when the queen takes here, Mikhail Tal is happy to play rook to b1 for 3 main reasons. First of all, protects his rook. Now the knight is guarding his rook. Secondly, he picks up a tempo, or like a free move from the queen. The queen's got to take off. And third, he now has put his rook on a half-open file. Now, a completely open file doesn't have any pawns in it. A half-open file for you is one that doesn't have any of your own pawns in it. That's your half-open file. Your opponent could have a half-open file, like if this A pawn was off, off of the A file, then black would have a half-open A file. Now, here he's attacking the queen, and Mikhail Tal doesn't immediately go after the queen. He just completes his development. He's finishing up. He has one more thing to do. Think about it. What is that one more thing he needs to do? There it is. He castles. And I guess if we think about it, he still has to bring that kingside rook into the action. Look what he's done. This is just amazing. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I want to flip the board around. Have a look. Yuck. Look at the black side. The king is still in the center. The knights haven't moved, which means the rooks haven't moved. The queenside bishop hasn't moved. And the only piece that is out past black's third rank is the queen, which should not be out there. Now, the queen should be behind the pawns, should have the other pieces out first. So, yuck. Now, in the opening, we tell you to do all these things that Mikhail Tal has done. Moved up the center pawns, brought the knights towards the center, put the bishops on squares where they have a lot of scope, put rooks on open files, get castled, your queen takes a tiny step forward. But now, what do? Well, now we've made the middle game. And so in the middle game, and by the way, Mikhail Tal's in the middle game, but Tringov is not. Tringov is still in the opening. So they're operating on 2 different guidelines here. But in the middle game, we start looking for ways that we can gain space, that we can put our pieces on stronger squares, that we can trade bad pieces for good ones, which means I'm not talking about trading your bishop for their queen. I mean trading your bishop that's blocked for their bishop that has a lot of scope, or trading off your knight that's just kind of sitting back there for their knight that's on a strong outpost square, that kind of thing. But also, we look for weaknesses in our opponent's position, something that's not protected, or it's only protected as many times as it's being attacked, and then you find a way to go after it, and you just go after that weakness. It's kind of like if there's a castle and you want to break through the walls and get into the castle. That's what this is like. And so in the middle game, you have to break through that castle and get at your opponent's king. So here, Tal looks at the position and he says, okay, I finished the opening. Now I can do whatever I want to do my middle game ideas. And he sees this pawn on d6. And he says, I'll go for that. Now, he's not going to trade pawns for it because his opponent would not cooperate. His opponent would play d5 and then chase his bishop away and kind of lock up the center. We don't want to lock the center. We want to open the center. You always want to do that if you're castled and your opponent's not castled. You want to bust open the center and break through. So he goes after it with the bishop. So his bishop comes, attacks the d pawn, and his opponent pushes. But now, of course, we have an open d file. I remember when my dad showed me this game because my dad said to me, and my dad was Florida State champion back in the 60s. He says to me, okay, Mikhail Tal's bishop is under attack. Where do you think he moves it? And I studied the board for a few minutes, and I thought about some different ideas. And then he says, okay, I was tricking you. He doesn't move it. What does he do instead? And I really couldn't figure it out. Mikhail Tal was a great player, and maybe still I couldn't figure it out. But what he did was he plays his queen to d6. I like to call this the power position against a king, when the queen is a knight's move away. It's not a check, but it's as close as you can be without checking, and it really limits your opponent's king. In this case, the black king has no moves. But the fun part about this move was that he had a bishop hanging, the pawn was attacking it. Now, he also has a knight hanging. So he leaves the knight unprotected. And Tringov says, great, I'll take here. Now, by the way, if he takes the bishop, this is a crazy move, but true. Knight d5, and the knight's heading right into c7, and it would be checkmate, except that the queen can give her life for it. And so if the pawn takes, now that opens the e-file with the discovered check, and things are going to get really bad, and white's going to win quickly. So white won quickly anyway, spoiler alert. The queen captures here, and so now he threatens checkmate. Mikhail Tal makes a move that threatens a checkmate. His queen is in the power position, and you could think bishop g5, threatening mate at d8, good, but he does it a different way. He threatens it by rook e d1. Now, you may have heard me say rook e d1. That's opposed to rook b d1. Why doesn't he use the b rook? Well, a couple reasons. One of them is that he would like to have this rook off of the square where it's attacked by the queen. Just in case whatever rook goes to d1 actually has to get in the action later on and do some move, and the knight's gone, then he's not going to get back rank checkmated. But the other thing is that rook on b1, it's on a half open file, and the rook on e1 is not. So picking which rook to move to a square, an open file, to protect a pawn, to attack opponent's piece, that's an important part of chess. So rook from e goes to d1, threatening an in-your-ear checkmate, queen d8. And so the knight comes to block it, but that's just what Tal needed. Tal didn't need much to get things going. And now with the bishop is being blocked from guarding the e6 square, Tal starts his sacrificing. Well, he's already given away a knight, but now check. Bringing the king out, check. Here comes the knight, check. This move wasn't possible before the knight was on d7. So that's why the rook to d1, to get the knight to block things off. But now the check, another check, and finally, checkmate. Notice, if he hadn't left that rook on the half-open file, the king would have an escape square. So even though it didn't look like that rook was going to play a part, leave your pieces on good squares and bring new pieces into the action to help out. Now, to me, a fantastic game, and really shows us how important it is to develop our pieces. Now, Coach Chris, I'm not sure how much we can head back and forth. Is there a chat for them in online, or if I'm asking questions, or is it best for me just to show and go? Okay, let's do that. So, all right. So this is a game I played against one of my students recently, and Jesse loves his queen too much. He plays a few checks here, and then he breaks more opening guidelines, pushes a side pawn. Yeah, and so now, sure enough, he captures the queen-knight pawn with the queen. So, and hey, I had seen Mikhail Tal's game, so I'm thrilled, right? Everything's going great for me. Now I get to capture here, and Jesse's a little careless. He throws his rook where I can take it for free. And now he breaks one more opening guideline by moving this knight to block the bishop instead of coming here, and it's all over. And you might see how this game finishes. This is fun because this is a smothered mate. And so my knight steps out of the way, discovered check, and a check from the knight, which means it's double check. Anytime it's double check, you have to move the king. So now the black king has to move. He can't take my knight. It's still check from the queen. He goes over, and now the fun part. Check, guarded by the knight. So the king can't take. The knight has to take, smothering his own king. He's trapped on d8, and of course, that's checkmate. It's really important to know your checkmate patterns inside and out. You should, do a ton of tactical problems, checkmate problems, know your end games, but it's always fun to do this. in this next game, I was actually black, and my opponent brings the queen out. And a lot of times a strong player might set up a position where the opponent thinks that they've won material. So here my opponent brings the queen out thinking he's winning the b pawn, but it's a trap. Queen captures here. Now, I have to admit, I didn't play it the best way. I said, okay, the queen came in. I'm going to make sure she can't get back. And when somebody's queen comes in and takes your queen knight pawn, there's really three things that could happen. You could trap their queen and just win the queen. You could get a lot of free moves from their queen by developing pieces and attacking. You know, obviously you get an open b file. And then also, you can just make sure the queen never makes it back in the action. And so then your opponent's kind of playing without a queen. And so that's what I thought that this position required. And I played d5 to block the queen from going back home. But the better move here, and maybe some of you guys see this, was a6. First attacking the bishop and also taking away that square from the queen. Now the queen can't move to a6. After the bishop takes, then I can play c6, and rook a7 is coming next, and I will win the queen. They'll get my rook, I'll get their queen. That's a good advantage for me. So I played d5, blocking the queen from going home, and after my opponent captures, I take back with the pawn, right? Instead of taking with the knight, that would leave my h-pawn isolated. So I capture with the pawn, also gives my rook an open file, a half open file that he can go to. I wonder if that's going to be important. So the bishop comes running back, offering a trade of bishops. I chase the queen out to this horrible square a6. And this was a mistake. My opponent's opening up the center, but they don't have all their pieces involved in the action. And so you shouldn't open the center if your opponent is the one with more active pieces. And so now my pieces jump into activity, and my poor opponent retreats his bishop the wrong way. He goes back off of the critical diagonal, and maybe you see what's happening here. I push the pawn, opening up a discovered check, and he should just go, darn, and give away the rook. Because instead, he moves into the corner, and he pays the price. When you're looking at a chessboard, it's your turn. Always look at all the checks you can play first, and just go 2 moves deep. Look at all of those first. It's your turn. You want to make sure that you're not selling yourself short. You're not getting less than you want. And like if you went to a toy store and your parents said, okay, you have 30 minutes to pick out a toy. So you would want to get a nice look at everything in the store. And not just pick the first thing you came to. And so there's some good moves here for black. You know, you might be thinking about capturing this pawn here or something like that. But if your parents gave you $20 and said, okay, happy birthday, pick out something in the store, you're probably not going to look first for things that cost $1. You're probably going to say, what's the most I can get for this 20 bucks? And you're like, oh, let's see. And you'll be kind of searching, and when you see something that's cheap, that might break easily, that only costs, you know, $3 or something, you're like, okay, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. And that's the way we should do it in chess. Don't look at, you know, pawn captures or moves that attack their bishop or something like that. First, go after the king. Can I checkmate the king? Do I have enough to checkmate the king? And in this case, we only have one check. All I'm asking you to do is look 2 moves deep. Let's see, check. Our bishop guards g1, so looks like they only have one move. The h-pawn takes the knight. Do we have any checks? Oh, look, a new check. So yes, that's how things finished. I dropped the knight in check, and then I looked up at him, and he looked at me, and he stopped the clock and resigned. He saw what's coming next, and I bet you do too. Pawn takes, and now rook to h7 checkmate. So this is called an Anastasia's mate, which is a kind of corridor mate when you're checkmating the king on the side. You just have to figure out a way to open up that file. Sometimes you're capturing that H pawn, and sometimes you're giving it something to capture, giving it some bait to open it up that file. All right. This game was played by two future grandmasters, Caden Troff and Daniel Nodorinsky. Daniel Nodorinsky is a really great author. He wrote an article for Chess Life for a while, a column for Chess Life, and has written a great book. And he is from the Bay Area. And Caden Troff, I think, is from Utah. And he's one of those first grandmasters that came from the internet generation, where even though he wasn't close to any chess places, any big chess clubs, he was able to get a lot of chess in by playing and learning online. And before that, it really hadn't been done too much. Players from those areas that are outside of New York and Los Angeles and Miami and Chicago, there weren't so many people becoming grandmasters in these places with small chess clubs that didn't have any players that were rated over 2,000, for example. But Caden Troff did that. In this game, though, he loses to Nodorinsky, and guess what he does? He takes the queen-knight pawn with his queen. Let's have a look. So first he plays f4 here, and he's grabbing a big chunk of central control. But what comes with pushing your pawns aggressively is that you can't push them backwards. And Nodorinsky comes out, attacks the queen, which comes out and attacks the b pawn. And Caden Troff says, okay, I'll attack you in the center. He defends it. And now, after Troff takes here, Nodorinsky says, okay, you're attacking my knight, and it's going to be check. But surprisingly, he captures at d4. I was shocked when I saw this the first time. And if the queen captures, the bishop comes back, attacking the queen. The queen has to run away. And now the bishop gets captured, and this looks really good for black. And see that open file? That's going to be an important part for that rook, even in the variation that happens. So the knight comes up, and he just lets that c-pawn go. It just castles. And the knight's hanging. And now the open file and invasion. Now, Caden Troff probably thought he might be able to get out of this by castling, putting this rook in the center, and attacking Nodorinsky's rook at the same time. But now the queen doubles on the b file, and there's one piece we need to get rid of. It's this knight. And so that's what we call a problem piece. And there's three main ways to get rid of a problem piece. So you see yourself looking at a chess position, and you're like, wow, my plan, it almost works. There's just one piece stopping me. And so here it's that knight on c3. And he plays a pretty clever move. He plays knight captures on e4, and it opens up a line for the bishop also to take this knight. So if the queen captures here, the bishop will take back. So if queen takes, then it's going to look pretty bad. This after the rook moves, for example, then I guess he could take the a pawn, and now he's threatening the queen to move into b2 checkmate. And there's not a lot of good answers for that. Well, in the game, Caden Troff captured with the knight, and his king went on a little walk. And by little, I mean big. Oh, wow, look at him. He's already at e4. And he resigned after rook captures here because he saw what the finish was going to be. But I'll show it to you just for fun. Check. This is an odd one. Check, letting him go right back to the square he came from. But then the queen just takes a little tiny step for checkmate. The bishop guards the dark squares along with help from the pawns, and the queen does the mating. And the same answer if the king had gone to d7, also queen f7 mate. And it's kind of funny that the white king joined his wife. I think he was going up there to scold her, and he didn't resign until he got right next to his wife, and he was like, why did you take the b-pawn? What were you thinking, leaving me there? You left me with no defense. And she was like, I'm sorry, it looked really good. I thought I was going to be okay. So, in any case, let's have a look at our next one. So, Siegbert Tarasch was a great chess player, and Alexander Fritz, who? Alexander Fritz. Right, Alexander Fritz gets a draw with the great Siegbert Troff in this game. And it's a quick draw. Troff's queen gets trapped after taking the queen's knight pawn. And they have to have a repetition. So the queen captures, and the knight jumps into b4, threatening to go into c2. And so the knight defends that. And Fritz says, okay, I'll take a draw with the great Troff. And they just go back and forth 3 times for the draw. So that's another problem, that a lot of times your queen doesn't have any way out. And that knight jumps up to the 5th rank. Notice that it says 4th, that's for white, it's the 4th rank, and that square is b4, but b4 is black's 5th rank. The knight's jumping in there and guarding these key squares that the queen now cannot go to. And he's able to go back and forth for that draw. All right, let the carnage continue. Now, in this game, we see a familiar idea where the queen coming in here. And what he gets from this one is just a lot of activity while the white queen is way far away. He gets that rook all the way to the 7th rank. And now the poor white pieces get tied down. He can't castle because this knight's being attacked twice. And if he castles, it's only defended by the bishop. So the queen comes running back, and he just sacrifices, because that's what you can do when you have a lead in development. You have to double check it and make sure it works. But that's one of the things you can do. Attacking the queen, he just picks up tempo, threatening to come in at f2 now with support from the bishop. He's castled. He's finished his opening. He can do things like bring his queen out. And now after this, one last move and he finishes, and white resigns because it's a skewer. He's attacking the queen, and behind it is that bishop, and then everything's just going to fall apart. And notice if the queen captures the bishop on g4, the black queen gets to capture back for free because of the pin on the e file. The white bishop will not be able to take the king in check, and you can never make a move that leaves the king in check. All right. So Tony Miles, this is our final game of never take the queen knight pawn. And in this game, Tony Miles, one of my favorite players, loses. Now, he was also a very bold player. Tony Miles actually in one game played as his first move, pawn to a6, and won the game. And he was playing against a world champion, Anatoly Karpov. Well, in this game, he doesn't win. Matter of fact, he gets beat pretty bad. There he is, taking the queen's knight pawn. So it looks a lot like the previous game to start. And Tony Miles thinks he's pretty clever here, right? His knight captures, deflecting the bishop, so he can play this check. And if the knight blocks, he gets to take this way, which is what happened. But it's taken a lot of moves. And the only piece that white has developed is his queen, which is not a good idea. Check. Now this is going to stop or prevent white from being able to castle. He can block with a bishop, and then bishop takes, king takes, but he just decides, I better move my king right away. And yes, almost finished development, and there it is. And black's pretty much finished with development. Maybe the queen could be out a little bit more, but once you get to this point, then things are looking really good. The bishop comes out opposing the other bishop, and the queen is also attacking it. He cuts off the queen with this move, and now he can sacrifice stuff, right? That's the whole fun part of chess, is you follow the rules, and then you get to have fun. So his bishop gets captured. He just takes back, leaves the pressure in the center. His rook sacks for the bishop. Still not taking this knight, just letting it sit there. The queen comes in. Now he finally captures it. King moves out of the check, and the rook comes over. All right, so now black plays a move, and the great Tony Miles resigns. So remember what I told you earlier about looking at all your checks? I always don't look at your checks first. Now, you look at your most forcing check first. the check that gives your opponent the least amount of choices. And so you might be thinking rook to c1, okay? But as you see, that's also a sacrificial check. You're giving your rook away, and it doesn't give you any new checks. So it may not help at all. I think the rook can just take you, and I'm not seeing anything. Well, next you should look at this check, because once again, you're not having to sacrifice anything. Your knight gets to play the check. The king has 3 squares, because now you've blocked off the rook. So he has 3 squares. You want to think about, if he goes to those squares, can you finish him off? And it looks like it could be pretty successful, because if the king goes to the dark squares, maybe this check is going to be trouble. But you also have to worry about your back rank, which means that they could sacrifice the rook or something. In the end, he figured out the move, and he plays knight to e3. Beautiful. Wow, what a move. And notice what happens. If the king comes up this way, then this knight jumps right into here. And if the king moves, when the king moves over, his only square, you don't even take the queen. Checkmate. Ouch. And so if the king comes, or if the pawn takes, then when the pawn recaptures, it opens up a discovered check from the queen that's going to turn into a checkmate at f2. So the pawn will take. I'll turn on my engine for a second. That allows me to make these moves. So let's see. Capture, discovered check. King runs for his life. Too bad. And checkmate. All right. Coach Chris, I prepared one more game to look at that is a king hunt by Edward Lasker against George Thomas. Fantastic game. Should I roll with that one? You can give me a nod, Coach Chris. Should I roll with that game, or should we open it up for Q&A? Where do we want to go from here? And by the way, guys, I also have the cahoots that I can drop. Show that one, or Q&A. Show the game. I'm option 1, show the game, or option 2,
you can't hear
Q&A.
me.
Now we can.
Okay, I got you now. I can.
Go ahead and show the game.
All right, let's have a look, guys. Fantastic game. Chess.com called it one of the greatest games in history, just because of the pure nature and clarity of the king hunt. Clarity meaning it was like straight ahead. So Edward Lasker is white in this game. He was a distant cousin to Emanuel Lasker. So they were not, they weren't brothers or like regular cousins, but they were related. All right, so Lasker seems to be following the rules. He has moved his knights a couple times, but that's because his opponent made an exchange in the center, and so now Lasker's only moved his 2 center pawns, and both his knights are out, both his bishops are out. But with his opponent playing a little dangerously, Lasker goes on the attack. And his opponent plays here. Okay, so there's just too many holes over here, and everybody's aiming towards this side of the board. The bishop's aiming this way, the queen's aiming this way, the knight's aiming here, the knight's aiming there. All of this is just adds up to huge trouble. And sometimes I tell you, look a couple of moves deep and try to find the checks that are going to lead to a checkmate or a successful combination where maybe you give away your queen for a rook, but then you get back a rook and a pawn, or a queen and a pawn, and so or queen and a rook or something. In any case, you get back more than you gave up. Well, here, this is a long calculation, and Lasker has to look at all the checks and make sure he can hunt down this king if he starts with the correct check. Now, if you were thinking knight takes bishop, opening up your bishop, and then queen takes h7, good idea. The only problem is when your knight captures at f6, g takes, opening the line for the queen to protect h7. So he says, I don't want to give him any chance for defense. Are you guys seeing this? Guess what? What? Queen takes pawn, drags the king or attracts the king to a square where he's going to be able to get a double check. Remember, that's the most powerful move in chess. That's not a checkmate, is a double check because you have to move the king. He's getting checked from two different directions. You can't block this one because it's still checked from the other one. You can't capture that one because it's still checked from that one. So anytime it's double check, you have to move the king. So he attracts the king to there. If the king goes back in the corner, it's all over. Knight g6 checkmate. And so the king is on the run, officially off and running. Check. Now the two knights guard each other, which is nice and convenient. The king can't capture either one. So this is a true king hunt. He is hunting down that king and using everything that he has in his disposal, at his disposal. So the pawns included. Check. And guess what? The king has now made it deep into your territory. Check. Now he had a faster mate, by the way, but I think he wanted to play this one. It's more fun. All right, so now it's a mate in two from here. Now Lasker didn't play the fun final move, but he did find a nice mate in two, and the piece that does the checkmating never even moves in the entire game, which is kind of a funny thing. All the other pieces get involved, and so maybe Lasker was like, hey, I want everybody to get involved in this. And this would be like a perfect game for live chess. If you were having a live chess game where people represented different chess pieces, everybody would get to get involved, all the big pieces. The pawns, not as much, but now the check with the rook supported by the knight, the king comes down to g1, and I know all you guys want to just castle and get checkmate, but Edward Lasker played king d2 for a rook roller style checkmate along his own first rank. So a great king hunt from beginning all the way to the end. Okay, Coach Chris, I'll stop sharing my screen. You and I can bounce back to the beginning or back in here, and I would like to be able to share the Kahoot with these guys also at the end, so that they can, when we finish our Q&A, so that the guys can click on the link. It'll be a link that they can just click on, and that way they can go directly and do it, or they can write down the PIN code and do it later. I have 3 different PIN codes for that. One for them to do a timed Kahoot, where the time is ticking, one Kahoot that has a video at the beginning that explains in-your-face checkmate, and then it has in-your-face checkmate questions. So. Chris, should I throw into the chat those links into the Skype chat, and then you guys copy and paste for the students?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. And should I throw in there the link to my site or not?
Yeah, please do. And yeah, let's make sure we take a few minutes to let people know how they can get in touch with you and do some of your events that you're planning. And if you've got anything you want to promote, please talk about that. The chat was very positive with your lesson, and people are wondering how to get more in touch with you and get more lessons like these.
Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed the lesson. It was one of my favorites, and I'm doing a new venture. A lot of Coach Jay's Chess Academy. It goes from white belt all the way to black. And if you're doing that, and you're also playing chess games, using a chess coach, watching daily chess musing YouTube videos, then you're going to improve. And by the time you're up through black belt, you should be an A player. And obviously you can't just read and expect to improve. But if you are reading and studying with the books and doing the puzzles, and also playing and learning from your games, and learning a good opening repertoire, a solid one from your coach, then that's going to be able to get you up to there. So never forget that you can't just do chess puzzles and expect to be a great player. There's a lot more that goes into that. It's kind of like if you go out to the driving range and hit golf balls, or the batting cage and hit baseballs, you can't then just go and be a professional golfer or baseball player, or if you shoot baskets in your driveway. It takes a lot more than that. You need a coach that can guide you, and there's a lot of different situations that are going to come up, and you want to be prepared. I also have a new video coming out. It's called Chess Hoots, and Chess Hoots is something where you guys will learn with a chess video at the beginning of a Kahoot. And then it has 8 puzzles, and there's 3 levels of the Chess Hoots. There's fundamental, which is very simple problems and very simple concepts, and then there's progressive, which is going to take to more challenging puzzles, and then there's one final set of puzzles called challenging for players that are higher rated that would want to really push themselves try to solve those puzzles. The building blocks, everything, checkmate, defense, in-game strategy, tactics, all of those you'll find in fundamentals, and then in progressive takes those higher levels, and then finally when you get to challenging, it'll be a mix of everything. We'll be talking about great players, chess trivia, and also opening plans and things like that. So there's a lot going on. If you did the in-your-face checkmate, if you write that down, then you can see the Chess Hoots video at the beginning. Once again, it's really easy when it's just an in-your-face checkmate video, but it gives you an idea of what you'll see in Chess Hoots. So
Awesome.
Thanks, Coach Chris. And yeah, so and there is a Black Friday special that I dropped into the link in case you guys want to click on that. That's only good till midnight tonight because we're shipping tomorrow, but starting Monday, I'm back to teaching my classes. So, and won't have time to ship tons of orders.
Cool deal,
So,
Jay. Thanks for joining us. And that was the best hour of chess I've watched, maybe in 2020. No doubt. That was awesome. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. And you know, it's so great that that Chris, you're able to bring together all these young players from across the United States, and I don't even know how far, but it's really a generous thing for you to give up your time this weekend and share your love of chess and your knowledge of chess with all these, and to see that inspires me to do that. So I appreciate that. I know you and I have spent a lot of time together over the years, and I've always known you to be a nice guy. So it's not a surprise to see you doing this, but I'm glad that all the campers are able to participate in this and enjoy it, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the weekend. You've got Jim Eade and International Master Josiah Sternman, and then Derek Wu, is it?
Yeah. We looked at a Derek Wu game today, where he beat Paavo Blatny in 2019. Grandmaster Blatny.
Wow.
That was Josiah Stearman game we're going to be looking at. Josiah just played on October 2nd of this year, and it could end up being game of the decade. I mean, it is.
Whoa!
It is.
Wow.
It is awesome. You're hard pressed to find a mistake in Josiah's play. He sets an example on how to attack the Queen's Indian defense. And of course, Jim Eade's got some really fun stuff that he's going to be going through. He's going to show us a game tomorrow and talk a little bit about the Eade Foundation and the importance of notating all your games.
Yeah, he's definitely a wise. His book sold over 100,000. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So very nice. Well, congratulations on this success, and I'm glad I was able to spend campers. You guys were able to check out the Cahoots and then watch the chess video. Yeah, I made like a YouTube video. But I'm not a professional YouTuber like you, Coach Chris, but I had to do something to. So it's my first. Again, there you are, inspiring to do
we
these
have the
things.
link to that video already? Did you already give that to us?
Well, it is in the in your face. It is in the in your face Kahoot.
Okay.
If you challenge yourself with the in your, you'll see it's the first video that pops up, and
Awesome.
and yeah, it's called Chess Hoots is the name of the YouTube channel. So with a Z at the end, and like an owl hoots. So chess and then hoot and a Z, and so you can follow me there on YouTube and be one of my very first followers, because I haven't really officially launched it yet, but I have to have the YouTube channel so that I can do the Kahoots, and that's how it works.
Awesome stuff.
So
Thank you so much, Coach Jay. I really appreciate it. And we had a little bit of a technical, a couple technical glitches with echoes and things early on. But you reminded me a lot of my father, who's a great, great guitarist. And whenever there was a problem with, he was just a consummate professional and just took the stage. And you did the same thing. You just took the stage and ran with it, which allowed us to fix some of the glitches. So much respect, Coach Jay. Awesome, awesome stuff.
great to see you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, guys.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Thanks. Bye bye.
And thank you to everybody who came. I was. Thanks to all the students for signing up for the Thanksgiving break chess camp. I look forward to seeing everybody back tomorrow. Have a great day.